for living. Yeah, Joe. You're the one and only Franklin in my life, except for Bob Franklin, who was in my biology class in high school. Hey, Joe. Hey, Joe.
Well, you know you've made it when Weird Al Yankovic has recorded a song parody in your honor. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Frank Morano here on AM970 The Answer until 8 o'clock this morning. I am very, very pleased at this point to be joined by a man who needs no introduction. Well, that was easy. Just kidding. On the phone is the man who mastered the introduction of guests both on television and on radio, a man who is a New York City institution, as you heard Weird Al sing there, a man who has taught me everything I know, not only about broadcasting, but about people, a wonderful man who's been my hero and mentor, the great Joe Franklin. Joe, good morning to you. Thank you so much for coming on the radio with me.
Oh, what a pleasure, Frank. I should be in an institution, right? I should be institutionalized. Huh?
Yeah, they say your office has rubber walls. Maybe that's the reason.
Oh, boy. Well, listen, it's I know the order of my disorder. I can. You say, where's Rudolph Valentino's coffee mug from 1926? I'll put my finger on it. I heard that the great Albert Einstein had an office similar to mine in being messy and unruly. So I guess he's in good company if he's with me, right?
So let me paint the picture for folks that haven't actually literally seen the picture of your office. Your office is very large. It's a spacious space, but it only has room for about 3 people because there's so much, some would say clutter. I know you would call it nostalgia, but from floor to ceiling, there's books, there's records, there's cassettes, there's photographs, there's VHS tapes, there's DVDs, there's posters. Anything you can possibly imagine is in that office. It's like a museum of nostalgia. How did you get this way? Are you a candidate for that TV show Hoarders?
Well, first of all, you mentioned room for 3 people. I want to add that those 3 people must be very short. They got to be short people.
Yeah.
Not that much space. But it's a thing that I've been offered all kind of money. I mean, seriously, to sell some of this stuff on eBay, and probably based on what you hear about Bob Dylan getting $1 million for his guitar or something, I could probably get enormous money. I mean, beyond the calculation, but I don't want to sell because I'm so emotionally attached to this stuff. It would break my heart to part with it, So people move to Florida that have been fans of mine. So instead of giving their things to the Salvation Army or to a junkyard somewhere, they go being offered a penny or a nickel. They give me everything, and therefore every week I seem to inherit way more photographs and record albums and archives and
but you don't seem to be telling anybody, no, I don't need any more stuff. You're still taking anything people bring you.
I haven't got the heart to turn anybody down. I'll even go to their house and pick it up myself. It's a sickness. It's a demon, but I'm still enjoying it, still thriving on it, and loving it. And someday I'll give the whole thing to a good charity or make a museum or something. But meanwhile, it's piling up here. And
Joe, I am very, very pleased that you agreed to come on the show with me this morning because you're the man that perfected this time slot on radio. You were on WOR radio for many years, from midnight to 5 a.m. on Saturday night / Sunday morning. At one time, your show in that time slot commanded the largest audience of any weekend overnight radio show in the world.
I did 44 years on TV. Most of my career, believe it or not, Frank, I was on 3 times a day.
I know. Yeah, no, on Channel 7 and then on Channel 9. But let me just ask you on the radio front, because we have a lot of the same listeners that would listen to you on WOR radio for so many years listening now. It's the same time slot, and we're following a show, Hollywood 360, which plays a lot of old movies on the radio, just like you used to do with the Lux Radio Theater. And I'm wondering if you can give me any advice on, one, how to master the hours of this new time slot from a lifestyle perspective, just to be awake and alert at 4 o'clock in the morning every Sunday. And 2, what is it that makes this audience, the early morning / late night audience on radio, different from the audience that I might be more used to, weekday mornings and drive time? What does it make them special in your view?
Well, the late night or the overnight audience is a very special thing. They're much more attentive. They're not doing the dishes, and it's just a question of winning their friendship and their sincerity. And the main thing I said before is to be sincere. You gotta, the audience can tell when you're not sincere, and once you learn how to fake sincerity, then
you've got it made.
It's just a question that I did I was telling somebody the things I've never done in my life. I've been offered to go all over the world, to Paris, England, France, Israel, airline, hotel, everything free, and I never went anywhere in my life. If I made a list of things I've never done, I never drove a car. Maybe I drove when I was a kid, but I never had a license. I never went to a beach. Never had my feet in the sand per se. I never played cards. I never had a credit card. By the way, I always paid cash. I've done nothing in my life except work, and I'm still enjoying it.
And no regrets about that, Joe. You never say, I wish I went skiing or I wish I'd taken that trip around the world. Do you?
And chatting with you, Frank, I know that we go back. I think was you a mentor when you were a kid, right?
Absolutely. You still are. But I want to ask you also another piece of advice. My boss now is your old boss, Jerry Crowley. I'm trying very hard to get Jerry to give me an 8% raise for next year. And he's a tough negotiator. And I'm wondering, how can I get this done? Any advice on pushing that magic button on Jerry that'll make him just give me whatever I want?
Well, Jerry's one of the, so far as being an executive, he's tops, and so far as his weak spot, just tell him your baby needs milk.
You got it. You got it. Now, your show on Channel 9, which you referenced earlier, Joe Franklin's Memory Lane, it was a staple in this city for literally decades. Any New Yorker that ever had insomnia, which is just about any New Yorker, this was before really everybody had cable. This show was ubiquitous. You were an institution, and just to give
you might know, not to break in, Frank, I invented the talk show. This big special put out by A&E, by Hearst called It's Only Talk, and they reminisce with me when remember the name Martin Block in the Make Believe Ballroom?
Absolutely, you were a platter spinner with Martin Block
platter spinner, record picker. Got my own radio show on WNEW, the late WNEW. And one day I get a phone call from Channel 7. They're considering lighting up in the daytime. There was no daytime TV, so they said, Joe, if we give you an hour that we like your voice, if we give you an hour, what kind of show might you do? I said, well, I do a show of people talking, nose to nose, eyeball to eyeball. They said, Joe, you're out of your mind. You can't do a talk show on television. You got to give them Seltzer pratfalls, baggy pants, burlesques, and rock and roll was starting to come. I said, I'm going to do a show of kids dancing to records. I said, Joe, you're nuts. Who's going to watch kids dance to records? So, Dick Clark comes along and becomes a billionaire. But I defied them, Frank, and I did the first pure, organic, from the bones TV talk show, and look what I've spawned.
Oh, no. But it was so special and so much better than what's on TV now, at least in terms of the talk format, because almost everything that's on TV now, Joe, it's scripted, it's people reading jokes from a teleprompter, or it's people interviewing guests that were pre-interviewed 4 times to tell stories, and then the person asking them about the story already knows what they're going to say. It's so fake.
How do you feel? It says on a card, fine.
Exactly. But now I want to play. This is how a typical Joe Franklin show might open. Let me play this audio clip because some of our audience might shame on them, but they might not have seen your show on Channel 9. But let me give you an idea of what. Let me give folks an idea of exactly what made this show so special and so organic and so real. Listen to this. This is Joe Franklin. This is about from 1967 or so.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody, a very cordial welcome to our Joe Franklin TV show every day for 90 minutes. We have open house. We chit-chat. We try and keep it informal and relaxed, and it's fun. It's fun.
And, Joe, it was fun. It was fun. It was a show that really, it was like you would have a conversation at a party or something. It was real. It was real, organic conversation.
And I did my own booking. It's a little-known fact today. I know shows that, I used to have like 15, 20 million viewers, and I know shows that have 12 viewers. They got 12 talent coordinators now. I did my own booking. I somehow felt in my own mind, Frank, the chemistry would go well together. I would have Ronald Reagan on with the dancing dentist. I would have Margaret Mead with the man who whistled through his nose. I was that's what you call a pretty strange mix.
Very eclectic, very diverse set of guests you would have on any given show. There would be
it worked out, right?
An opera singer next to Babe Ruth's wife on any given show.
I remember that show. Yeah, that's right.
Now, if folks also may remember that you because you are such an integral part of New York City culture, and you have been for so many years, you are synonymous with New York. They would put you any movie trying to replicate New York City, would put you in it. And sometimes I meet younger people, 25 years of age or older. They don't listen to AM radio. They weren't born when your Channel 9 show went off the air. And I'm trying to explain to them what made you so special, what makes you who you are. And I say to each of them, you've seen Joe Franklin. They say, no, I haven't. I said, yes, you have. And they said, well, no, I haven't. I said, you've seen Ghostbusters, haven't you? And they said, oh, yeah, sure, I've seen Ghostbusters. Who is he in Ghostbusters? I said, he has the most famous line in the movie. And then I asked them, well, what's the most famous line in the whole movie? And they think, and they think, and then they think, and they say, I've seen the movie 100 times, and then I hear, and they can't come up with what the most famous line it is, but it's always this one.
As they say in TV, I'm sure there's one big question on everybody's mind, and I imagine you are the man to answer that. How is Elvis, and have you seen him lately?
I still see that, and I still laugh.
Oh, Frank, I'm so glad you brought it. I love that. I got a big royalty check the other day for 10 cents. but I do. The movies that I'm in, including that, and Broadway, Danny Rose, and 29th Street, and the whole catalog. I never once looked for a part. They always came to me. Once somebody asked me if I would audition, so I auditioned. You know what they said? We're sorry, we can't use you. You're not the Joe Franklin type. That really happened.
I'm so glad you mentioned 29th Street also. It gives me an opportunity. We had Danny Aiello on the show recently when we were still on Friday nights. That is one of my favorite movies to this day. If people haven't seen it, they should definitely check it out. And you are actually the first person people see in the movie, and your performance as yourself, you managed to pull it off, playing Joe Franklin, is just magical. Let me play that for folks if folks haven't heard it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Memory Lane himself, Joe Franklin.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. The big moment has arrived at long last. The very first New York State Lottery, the Empire Stakes, with some lucky person receiving $6,200,000. The very first in New York State. I know the excitement has been mounting and generating and mushrooming and snowballing and escalating and skyrocketing, and the contestants out there, the audience, you're kind of palpitating and drooling and salivating and getting ready now for the moment. The moment has arrived, and the lucky person is Mr. Frank Pesh.
Now, Joe, there's no way that they scripted all those adjectives and adverbs and verbs for you, right? You had to have...
No, that they told me nothing. They said, get out there, Joe, and do your business. It's almost like when you're in a Woody Allen movie. There's no script in a Woody Allen movie. He just gives you a rough scenario, what the sequence, what the dialogue could be, and he lets you ad-lib it. So it's... I've had that good fortune of not having to memorize lines because I can't memorize. I've had people want me to do Broadway shows, and I said I can't memorize. I just never learned how to memorize. But so you've certainly done your research, Frank. I adore the way you've done this. It's
well, no, I mean, it's
been my life, the best ever.
It's been, a lifetime of studying you and your craft for as long as I've been old enough to turn on a radio or watch a TV. I want to ask you, Joe, about your interview technique. As we mentioned, you weren't one of these hosts that would have the questions scripted or where the guests would be pre-interviewed. And yet, I'd watch your show or I'd listen to you on radio, Joe, and your guests would say some of the most revealing things anywhere that they would never say elsewhere. How is it that you were able to get folks to say such candid, revealing things, and what's the secret to it?
Well, I'm one of the few who would look in their eyes and try to hypnotize them and memorize and get them to forget that they're on TV. And I guess the main thing was always to get the plug out of the way. They're always nervous about they're not going to get the book for the plug for the book or whatever the movie. So I get and then once you've done the initial plug, then they forget where they are, and they do open up, and it's just a question of sincerity. I always say, once you learn how to fake sincerity, then you got it made, right? I had that knack. Can I tell you one thing? What happened 2 days ago with a taxi cab? The driver didn't want to take any money from me, which is unheard of with a taxi cab. So I said, why? He said, when he came to this country from Latvia, he learned English watching me on TV, because I used to try to speak slowly and distinctly. Is that touching? But I made him take the money, but still, one guy said to me, are you Jackie Mason? I said, yeah. I give him a nickel tip so he would tell the whole world Jackie Mason is cheap, a whole cab on a whole routine on taxi cab happenings.
It's true. It's true. The things that happen to you, people wouldn't believe it. It's almost too funny to believe. But Joe, many folks know you as, aside from being a TV broadcaster and a radio broadcaster, as the king of nostalgia. But what folks may not realize is that you were always the king of nostalgia. Even when you were in your 20s and your 30s, you were always obsessed with nostalgia. This affection for old movies, old TV shows,
Frank, can
old
I tell
theater.
you something? You ready for this? When I started using the word nostalgia, I was criticized by teachers, by professors, because they said if you look in the dictionary, Joe, nostalgia relates to old sports or something, nothing to do with old time show business. So I more or less paved the way for nostalgia, meaning movies and TV and radio.
Wow, so
laning.
you redefine the word nostalgia.
Very well put, beautifully.
Wow,
beautifully spoken.
It's incredible. Joe, I know you're very, very busy. And for folks that are just tuning in, we're talking with my hero, my mentor, the greatest broadcaster this city has ever seen, Joe Franklin, an incredible man who you could still hear regularly on Bloomberg Radio, just today and every day. And he is an incredible, incredible person. Joe, you've told me in the past that the greatest interview, you've interviewed over 60,000 guests. You're in the Guinness Book of...
No, 500,000.
500,000, excuse me. I forgot to...
28,000 TV shows and 500,000 guests.
I forgot to carry the zero, but you're in the Guinness Book of World Records. You've interviewed more people than anybody in history. I've asked you before who your favorite guest was. You've always told me consistently that it was Bing Crosby. Now, I want to play for folks. This is right before Bing died. This is a little snippet of an interview that you did with the great Bing Crosby. I want to play for folks because to hear Bing and how comfortable he is here with you, it's Bing as I'd never heard him in any other interview. I want folks to listen to this.
That was a sad story. My guest, ladies and gentlemen, is the man who has sold more records than anybody else. More hit movies. Now,
that may be a fiction about the records, Joe. You can't.
You think the Beatles? You think the Beatles came close?
I think they must sell more. Yeah. When you think of these days, there's so many more record buyers. So many more people have playback machines and all those stereo sets. In those days, gee, if you got a record to sell 100,000, you were having a big sale. Way back there, So I don't see how that could be true, but the figures are put out by the record companies. I'll have to check that over and see if I got paid on all those royalties.
Yeah.
Hard to believe if they sold 400 million records. I didn't get that much money, Joe.
Being
But I'm glad to get anything,
You did fair. You did fair. The fellows who impersonated you in vaudeville, including Sid Gary, and when they would do that boo-boo-boo-boo, yeah. I used to wonder, did you ever really... Like they say, like Cary Grant never said Judy, Judy, Judy,
yeah.
and Betty Davis never said this, and Humphrey Bogart never said, all right, Louis, drop the gun. People have asked me, because I'm supposed to be somewhat an authority, did Bing Crosby ever really go boo-boo-boo-boo-boo-boo when he sang?
Yes, there's a couple of records, I think, in Learn to Croon, from a picture called College Humor.
Was that on purpose or because...
No, it was considered very classy. Then, from boo-boo-boo, they went to Vo-Do-De-O, and then Hi-De-Ho, and then Ha-Cha-Cha.
Joe, even there, right before Bing, unfortunately passed away, he was still, you were bringing tidbits out of him that everybody had always wanted to know. How is it that you're able to bring this information out of these guests?
Glad you mentioned it. Because Bing, in private life was very cold, very icy. And in fact, it's so ironic that the most notorious singer of romantic ballads of all time would be non-romantic enough to tell his songwriters, don't put the word I love you twice in one song. It was very the opposite of what we thought. But that day with me, I sort of looked in his eyes. In fact, I brought on his wife. So when I brought on his wife, Catherine, that sort of loosened it up a little bit too, I suppose. But he was so warm and so revealing and so great. As you say, it's my favorite interview of all time. And I had Marilyn Monroe, I had Charlie Chaplin, Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, Cary Grant. I had everybody except Greta Garbo, I guess. But I had everybody that ever lived, and it's... For Bing to be my favorite is, I guess, it's a very fond memory.
Joe, obviously you've always told me, whenever I've asked your opinion on what's on TV now and what's on radio now, you've always started by saying, you can't knock what's current. And certainly that's true. You can't argue with success. But if you could wave a magic wand tomorrow, Joe, and if you could say, if they put you in charge of broadcasting for a minute, and you could wave a wand and transform the state of radio today, what is it that you think could be improved about radio and TV talk shows today?
What a great question. I would bring back Lassie, Lost in Space, Donna Reed Show. I'd bring back Petticoat Junction. I'd bring back all those, who was the man, Reed Hadley, Racket Busters, and all those kind of things, the shows that I loved when I was a kid in black and white, Danny Thomas. And there are maybe 25, 50 channels showing those things nowadays that don't get much press, don't get much publicity. But it's I bring back the best of the past. I love what's going on now. I mean, as you say, you can't knock what pays the rent, and you can't knock that all these guys make millions of dollars per week. Jay Leno still calls me. I used to more or less manage Jay Leno when he was a kid. I got him as early club dates at Dangerfields and places like that. They still call me, and you can't resent that they're making $50, $60, $75 million a year. But I go back to the days when the money was not that plentiful, and we built up an industry, and I'm very honored to be, as you pointed out, the pioneer, and still going pretty strong. I still do my things in colleges and nursing homes. I was in a nursing home last week. You couldn't believe it. I saw a lady in the front row. I said, the man was sleeping. I said, what's the matter, lady? She said, my husband is sleeping. I said, well, do me a favor, wake him up. She said, no, you wake him up. You put him to sleep.
Joe, my friend, it is always a pleasure to catch up with you. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Invite me back, and you come on to my show whenever you're ready, Frank.
Thank you, Joe. I'm going to come see you and bother you for lunch one of these days, okay?
Love to Curtis and love to Jerry Crowley, and God bless you.
God bless you, my friend.
Frank, you are the best.
There he is, the great Joe Franklin. If you want to jump on board with any portion of our conversation, you can call 877-970-2999. That's 877-970-2999. You're listening to Frank Morano on AM970. The Answer.